Hello and welcome. This is a video series where I talk about whatever I happen to have played in the last month. There's no formal requirements for why a game might or might not appear on this list, but in short, I started this to document what I've been playing and give myself an avenue to talk about games that otherwise don't fit into my content. There's plenty of things here that I've mentioned because I think they're cool, and I play them casually with friends, but I absolutely haven't made any videos outside of that, nor do I plan to. So if you want to see the games I'm playing and get some thoughts that don't always make it into the videos, do be sure to get subscribed, leave a like while you're down there. And for now, let's get into the best games that I played in September of 2024. As it happens all too often, time very much got away from me in September, probably because I spent most of the month playing Black Myth Wukong. But I've already talked about that pretty extensively, including last month's episode, and at least as of right now, I don't feel like I have anything else to highlight there. So instead, I want to talk about some of the new games I played, like TCG Card Shop Simulator. Much like the name implies, this is a game about running a card shop, selling booster packs and boxes, plushies, and all sorts of other bits of useless junk to addicted players, and then giving them a place to feed their addiction. Play Tetramon. Now in general, I am a fan of sim games, especially city simulators, though I've played a fair number of shop simulators as well. But this game really resonated with me, because when I was younger, I used to play Yu-Gi-Oh! And Magic the Gathering. Though I never had too many decks or too many fancy cards, because cards are expensive and I really only played casually with my friends anyway. But this game does an absolutely wonderful job of capturing the feeling of being in a card shop, though luckily there's no smell-o-vision, so at least you can't feel like you're really there. That said, spraying stinky customers with deodorant is very much a game mechanic. So despite the pretty simple presentation, and honestly fairly simple gameplay mechanics, I spent a lot of time with TCG Card Shop Simulator. Possibly even more than I should have, because there's a lot of other games that I was playing to try, and I was like, nah, I'm just going to play this one more. And part of the reason for that is you can do a lot to min-max the game, and you can play in all sorts of crazy ways, like by only selling single cards, or by not selling cards at all and still somehow having a successful card shop. Check the videos up in the card down below if you want to know how either of those work. Now in terms of a min-max, I did learn how to do it, and I did try doing all of it. But I have to say, at the end of the day, I prefer not min-maxing, even if that means I make less profit. Because I don't know, just selling all of one thing or going for a hyper-specific, very focused setup just doesn't feel like the card shop fantasy. I want to see people sitting at the play tables, even if they aren't super profitable. I want to sell all that random junk. Sure, I don't make much money per, but that's totally okay, because I do feel like I'm running a card shop, or at the very least, paying some employees to run the card shop for me and still ensuring that it's profitable. Because after all, if I'm paying my employees to do the basic things like stocking the shelves and manning the register, that's more time I can spend opening packs and collecting shinies. Now, as much as the game is off to a very solid start, there's also a huge roadmap with lots of features to come in the future. And so far, the solo dev behind the game has done almost daily changes since release. But, as I always like to say, buy something for what it is right now, not what it may someday be. So don't buy it for the idea of, oh, it'd be really cool if there was a playable card game, because right now, there isn't a playable card game, that's just a feature on the roadmap. With that said, at least for the current early access state, I can absolutely recommend the game. And if you want to see more, I'll leave some videos that I've already made up in the card and down below talking about the title in a lot more detail. On the other hand, the second game I want to talk about isn't actually a new title. It's Ghostlore, which has been out for a while, but it did get a major update. Now, many of my favorite titles are indie games. Sure, some of them, they're the indie games that you know and love, things like Hades or Slave Aspire. But others are these really cool, super tiny titles, many of which have 1,000 or less reviews on Steam, which is a real shame, because often these are some of the coolest games. They aren't things made to be corporate product or built by monetization experts to make the most money and sell for $1 billion and all that other nonsense. They're just really cool things made by people who absolutely love this stuff. People who are making art because they're passionate about it, not people who are making a product because they're paid to do so. Though, to be clear, there are many, many, many devs who work in the AAA space who are just as passionate. It's just that when there's $100 million involved from a publisher, sometimes the restrictions that come with business get in the way of the art. And even though Ghostlore did get a big update, it's really not a live service or anything like that. This was 1.1, which brought new mythic items to the game, and so I came back to check them out. And I have to say, I really like the approach they settled on. because most of the time, the mythic items have weaker stats than their other counterparts. The gear you find throughout the game is going to be better if you're looking at stats alone. But instead, these mythic items have signature skills, and that allows you to do a lot of really cool stuff. Because normally in Ghostlore, you have to spec into up to 3 classes and you get skills based on that. What if there's just one thing that you really want to use for your build and it's not on a class that's otherwise useful? Oh, too bad, so sad. Or you equip a mythic item that grants you that skill. In this way, mythic items are often build enabling and let you do really cool stuff. Plus, for some of them, the skills they grant are vastly different from the normal base versions. Like the mythic version of Radiant Spear is just god rays from the sky that burn your enemies, which is really different from the normal Radiant Spear, where you get to throw little lightning bolts at your foes. Sure, you can roleplay Zeus with even a regular Radiant Spear, but man, having those giant Protoss god lasers coming down from the sky is just really, really cool. And so I'm really glad I took some time to check out the update and play around with some of the mythic items. If you want to know more, I'll leave a video of my experiences up in the card and down below. The third game I want to talk about for this month is Ravenswatch, which also isn't a new game, but it is newly released into 1.0. It's a title that I heard about before. In fact, I generally heard good things. But previously, I heard it described as a roguelike with co-op elements. Well, that's not untrue. I think it's more of a PvE MOBA. Admittedly, I'm not sure if that's a genre. After all, I've never heard someone refer to a game as a SOBA. But I do think it has that feeling of playing a jungler in a MOBA, kind of like how V Rising did. So basically, you appear on the map, you have various skills which you can enhance as you level up. Also, as you level up, you unlock other skills, including an ultimate. Like I said, this is very, very MOBA in terms of character design. And you do this by going around to little camps, or I guess little events. You defeat enemies, you gain EXP, you build up various currencies, some of which you can spend at shops. That's the roguelike elements coming in. And the whole goal is to build yourself up before challenging the boss. And by the way, you are on a timer. You only have 3 days within each zone, with 3 total bosses in the run. At the very least, 3 total bosses on the base difficulty. These bosses are eldritch chthonic horrors that very much remind me of something I'd see in Darkest Dungeon or Cult of a Lamb. So overall, it's an interesting concept, but I don't think this game is going to be for everyone. Much like a MOBA, the combat can be pretty punishing. And there isn't very much of a meta progression system to fall back on if you're struggling. Yes, you do get a bit stronger from run to run, you unlock new skills, and you can spec into them. But the progression feels a lot more like Risk of Rain 2, where it's more about you getting good as a player than you grinding out upgrades to make your character better and then having your character carry you. Which of course means that in my first couple runs, I absolutely got destroyed. But then, after playing for a couple hours, I got my first win on Scarlet, which is the Little Red Riding Hood character. I did this by relying on the big bad wolf form that she turns into at night. Because that's the other thing about this game. All the playable characters are based on fairy tales and folklore. So Scarlet is Little Red Riding Hood. You also have the Pied Piper, who's a ranged attacker that has his own army of rats, and Aladdin even shows up if you unlock him after a little bit. For the most part, each of the different characters have their own unique playstyle, and I do think they've done a very good job of paying attention to the lore and flavor of the characters. Though I think I'll go into that in more detail after I've had time to actually play them all, and if I make any sort of wrap-up video with my thoughts after playing the game more. Right now, I'm a little bit on the fence, because on the one hand, I think it's really cool, and I have had fun playing. On the other hand, at least for me personally, this feels like a better with friends game, especially because I'm not super good at MOBAs. So as I go up to higher difficulties and as it gets more punishing, there's a very good chance that I'm simply not going to keep up without a lot of practice. Which is to say, I don't want to commit to making a dedicated video on this, but it's also not an impossibility. Yes, just stay tuned for future updates in that regard. Then last but not least, I wanted to mention that I quickly checked out the demo for Mandragora. This is an upcoming Souls-like Metroidvania title that very much seems to draw inspiration from things like Ori and the Blind Forest, and also Hollow Knight. As a 2D side-scroller, a lot of the combat is attack a couple times, the enemy goes to attack, you roll through them, which of course puts you behind them out of attack range, wait a little bit to recover your stamina, attack a couple more times, fall into a nice rhythm, and repeat until the enemy is dead. Though in fighting multiple foes, that very much does throw a wrench into the works. Now, in comparison to the early pre-alpha demo that I played for this game, I did notice there's a lot more attention to detail when it came to the world building and the storytelling. You interact with a lot more NPCs, and there's even full voice acting now. But the thing that I'm most excited for with Mandragora is the build customization and skill system. Because the skills very much remind me of something out of Path of Exile. You can kind of mix and match, provided you're invested in the base tree to the point where you get to unlock stuff. Unfortunately, in the demo, you're locked to one class, so there isn't much room for experimentation yet. That said, I'm very much looking forward to either a future demo or the release of a game where I get to play around with all the stuff, try the different classes, and hopefully make an awesome build. Now, in the past, I haven't spent too much time talking about demos in these videos, but I think I'm going to be doing it more often from now on. I do play a lot of demos, especially since Steam is pushing them now. And I think that's a really good thing. I want more games to have demos, and I want more demos to stay available even after the game releases. Because after all, if your game's good, why not let people try before they buy? Especially when progress carries over, I'm much more likely to buy a game if I get to play the demo first. I don't know if you'll see a demo segment every month, but there's definitely going to be some from now on. But that's about it for the games that I played in September of 2024. With that said, what have you been playing? Let me know down below. With big upcoming releases like Diablo 4 Vessel of Hatred and the Path of Exile 2 Early Access, I think by October and November are going to be pretty busy. But in December, I'm hoping that I have time to search out some more small indie titles. Things like Ghostlore, games that you probably haven't heard of. Or if you have, you might not know much about them because you just heard a name somewhere. And if I do, I want to play them and I want to talk about them. Again, I can't completely guarantee I'll do this since, especially if the Path of Exile 2 Early Access ends up getting a lot of updates throughout December, there's a good chance I'll just be playing that most of the time. But it's definitely something I'd like to do in the future, and who knows, maybe instead of it being a month of things I focus on, it's going to be a game here and a game there. And so if there's any hidden indie gems that you think are really cool, but you don't think anyone's heard of them, do let me know down below. One thing I will 100% commit to is doing some sort of wrap-up at the end of the year. I don't know if it's going to be a retrospective of games I played in 2024, or if it's going to be more of an award show thing. Going over the games, putting them in categories, saying which one was my favorite, something like that. I guess either way, get subscribed so you don't miss the future videos. But that's about it for me today. So thank you very much for watching to the end. I'm glad you enjoyed, and I'll see you in the next one.